Okay, test. Is it the 8th today of December? My goodness. Okay, welcome everybody to my studio. My name is Michael Markowsky, and today we're going to make a painting. Well, I'm going to make a painting. I hope you're going to join me. I'm going to show you how to make a painting from scratch, and I'm going to assume you know very little to nothing about how to paint. I'm going to walk you through step by step on how to do this. So maybe just before we go too far, one of the things I want to show, and I just put this up seconds ago, is a link to the Dropbox, which has inside of here a couple of images. So because we're going to be doing a portrait drawing today, I'm going to show you guys how to draw this, but if you wanted to download the outline of this drawing, you could certainly do so that you could print it out and then trace it onto the canvas. So that might just kind of help some of those of you that might struggle with the drawing part of the practice. Okay, so the artist that we're going to look at today for inspiration for our painting is one of my favorites, and I know I say that all the time because I pick all my favorites, but I also think that all of these artists that we've looked at are undeniably great artists who've contributed a great deal to the global creative culture. And being a Canadian, I am trying to sneak a little bit of extra Canadian content in here because often as Canadians, the art that we know of, it happens to be art made by Americans, and there's a lot of great art here in Canada that's been made over the thousands of years that there have been people living on this land. And today is no different. The artist that we're going to talk about, her name is Betty Goodwin. And Betty Goodwin, and sometimes you might see her middle name pronounced in here, Rudish, Betty Rudish Goodwin, was a Canadian artist, born and raised and passed away in Montreal. You could see she lived to the grand old age of 85 and died not too long ago, so fairly recently. And while she was alive, was one of the towering figures in Canadian art, but also one of the rare Canadian artists that crosses over into the global art world. So for a period of time, I have no problem saying that she would have been more well known as like a Canadian export than Celine Dion or whose name escapes me. Why do I think of Anne Margaret? I keep thinking because we're watching so much of The Crown, that Netflix television show about the Queen recently. But anyway, just a really well-known, super respected, artist, and lived a fascinating life. We'll get into that as we go here. I'm just sort of quickly showing the bio here on the Wikipedia. If we look at her art, however, some of this might be the art that, I imagine those of you that are new to art might look at this and be like, oh, well, I don't know. This looks like pretty abstract stuff. My kid could do that kind of stuff, which, we can talk about as we paint here, the difficulty of actually making these kind of paintings, if that's of interest. But, her work, and this is mostly her later work from the, I would say, 80s to the early 2000s before she passed away, was this fairly abstract, very expressive, emotionally intense artwork, often having figures, people in the pictures. But let's look at, if we look here, we'll see a few more images. And you'll see as we go back in time, some of these artworks, like these are the dates of auction they were sold, but a lot of these artworks we're seeing on the screen now are from her earlier period, from like the 50, well, she was born in the mid-20s, so, you know, in the 40s she would have been in her early 20s. 50s, she's making this kind of semi-abstract, semi-cubist kind of imagery. This is also at the period of time, the beginning of abstract expressionism. And you'll see here's the painting we're going to make, made between 1950 and 1956. And one thing well, actually we'll get into why I chose this painting shortly here. So you see all of these paintings. I think this one is from the 70s. And do we see? So she was obviously known as a painter, but she also achieved a lot of recognition for this type of artwork. This is sort of how she made her name here, 1969, called Vest. And what she did is she started taking men's clothing, vests, jackets, and using them in the printmaking process as to create an etching, which, to be quite honest, I still can't wrap my head around. I've never been a printmaker. I've taken a few printmaking classes, but this kind of, I mean, I don't know exactly how this would have been done. Etching is like a chemical, well, it can be a chemical intensive process, and creating an image that is sort of burned into the surface of a plate, copper plate perhaps, and then you would ink that up, and then you could make an infinite number of prints, just like we did with the Banksy project last week. But these, I think, were revolutionary. No one had used actual objects like this, let alone clothing, to create prints before. And I think that sort of blew people's minds, certainly put her on the global art scene. And she made you know, lots of different images relating to these kinds of themes. And you'll see it, you know, obviously a big part of her artwork is about feminism, being a woman in Canada at the time, and using these jackets and men's clothing to, you know, talk. I think there is I mean, I don't want to speculate really on her personal life, because I have no idea necessarily, and I haven't been able to find too much information about this, but like exactly why she was doing these. But there is, because violence and these kind of very emotionally expressive characters play such a big part in her art, it does seem like she is maybe commenting on a particular, you know, kind of masculinity. So here's just some more figures. Here's an image of her, right, working on her. You see standing on a ladder to make these large paintings, which are very physical, very gestural, right? The body is really involved in making a painting that big. Let me see. Here's another print that she made. And I think let's get right into it. So the image that I've chosen for us to paint, again, is, you know, one of the paintings she made at the beginnings of her career. And I think this is an interesting painting because it seems to literally, it's a figure kind of semi in shadow, to, you know, to, pardon the pun, but like to foreshadow some of the themes and the particular approach to painting that she would use later on in her life. And so this painting, you can see, is a different painting, a different portrait painting than the one we did a few weeks ago of the Alex Katz painting, right? This one has, you can see the speed at which it's painted. There's drips and splatters and things on the painting, and I'm going to show you how to do a little bit of that if that's of interest to you, to know kind of more closely how she would have made this painting. So let's get right to it. Now, if you've printed off the original, in fact, or sorry, if you've printed off the outline drawing, let's see if I can load that up and get my printer going here. because I'll show you how to do two different versions of this. So I've got my little printer next to my desk here. Oh. Because I'm also going to do another painting, a separate one, a little bit later on, and I'll kind of talk about that as we go, depending on how much time we have. Every time I say I want to do two paintings in an episode, I'm sure people are like, oh, I know how this goes. This is going to be another one of those 4-hour sessions. So here's, if you were to download this from the Dropbox, this is the outline version. And literally all I did was just trace it on the computer. So let's print this out here. Okay. And while that's printing out, I'll get my materials going here. So we're going to need our palette. And I'll talk about the gesso in a second. We're going to use pretty much all the colors that I suggest you buy. So we're going to use a little bit of black and white because we're going to have some gray in this picture. Make sure that. Okay. And I got my paint brushes here. And a rag. That is funny. I just got a new ink cartridge. It got through a number of prints for last week's episode, and then that's the deal. I guess if I run it through a few more times, it'll wake that ink up again. But this is fine because if you wanted, you could just we don't need all the detail on here because we're going to use that just to trace onto the canvas. So we got our paints, we've got a couple of rags that we're going to use, brushes, a little bit of water, although as you've seen we barely use any water in the actual painting process anyway. Okay. And then here's a couple of canvases. Both of these I just gessoed an hour ago. And you know, here's this acrylic gesso you can get from any art supply store. I've talked at length about gesso and why to use gesso and all that kind of stuff before, but just a quick little summary. It's what it does. I apply that onto the surface of the canvas, and it helps fill in some of the little gaps in the weave of the fabric. And then I just take some sandpaper. So in this case, this is 220 grit paper, which is sort of like the kind of stuff you use to file your nails down. Okay. And so that makes a nice smooth surface here, right? I'm just going to rub it off, all that dust onto my clothes there. Let's do another one. Okay. So one of these I'm going to eyeball, and the other one I'm going to trace onto there. So that gives you an opportunity to, whichever one you want to do. So just to quickly, so you know how to do this tracing process, what I'll do is just go along the back here with a pencil. This is an HB pencil, same kind of pencil you would find in your library, or 99.999% of all pencils on Earth are HB pencils. So I'm just scribbling on the back here. And you don't have to do this. Again, I'm going to show you how to draw this all out by hand. But I do think it's nice to, if you really want to nail the actual proportions and everything, here's kind of the secret way of doing it. Now, I did that pretty quickly. Ideally, you would really go over here and ensure that you've really covered it solidly. So let's just see if I start outlining with my red pencil. So you see, maybe not enough. Okay, so that's good to know right off the top, right? So let's go at this a little bit longer here. Now, of course, I have graphite paper. I'll show you that in a second. And that's a great way of quickly doing, you can skip this entire step of covering the back of your paper with graphite. Let's see if this works better a second time here. Okay. And, you know, there's barely a line there, but that's all we need, right? So I'm just going to quickly go around here. Those of you that want to eyeball it, give me just 2 more minutes, and I'll show you how I would do that. And I know there's plenty of people who see this kind of activity as cheating. And we've talked about it before, but you know, any artist is going to use whatever tools are available in order to make their artwork as quickly and efficiently as possible, and also to ensure the quality is as high as possible. So this is probably not how she would have done this. I imagine she sketched it out herself directly onto the canvas. But the other thing with doing this process is, especially for beginner artists, it helps you just get right into the painting. You're not sitting there worried about how closely it looks, if I get the likeness down, etc. It's just kind of, you just jump right to the painting of a picture. So let's now take a look at the results. Very faint kind of image here. We see them side by side. So one thing, once we've got this down here, I'm just actually going to go back over top of these lines. And I purposely chose kind of a simple image here like this so that we can do this pretty quickly. One thing about like abstract painting is, a lot of artists begin, or especially in the history of art and abstraction, a lot of artists begin as representational painters, artists who are trying to represent what they see directly. And then as they grew older, kind of wanted to experiment and tried doing something that was a little bit different, and began, bringing some abstract elements and approaches into their artwork. And Betty Goodwin was certainly no different, right? This was a very common thing for artists to be doing at the time. So let's see here. Okay, so this version, using the printing out the image, you saw how quickly, what took 5 minutes to get that done and on the canvas. And now I've got something that looks pretty darn close to, let's find this here, right? Or this version, right? We've got the image on the canvas ready to go, ready to paint. But let's do another one where we eyeball this, and I'll just kind of show you a little bit about how I would go about this if I didn't have that assist to help me. So the first thing that I like to do is, let's find the middle of this picture, and I'm going to draw a horizontal line right through the middle, horizontal line right through, or vertical line right through the center again. So now we have this middle point. Okay, now what I want to do is now start figuring out how much space I have on this picture and where everything is going to fit. So if this is the middle point, the chin looks like it's, you know, if this is a quarter of the way, if we divide these in half as little markers for ourselves, if that was a quarter of the way, that almost looks like this is around where the mouth would be. And then this would be kind of our chin, right? So this could be where the chin is going to be, right? So let's just take this and kind of bring a line up like that. Okay. Simultaneously, if we divide this in half, it looks like the hair comes like the hairline is almost here, maybe a little bit close, a little bit further down. And then so we can kind of do this shape, right? And then same thing here, looks kind of like this is her ear, right? So if we had kind of dropped this down, this would be where her ear is going to be somewhere down here. So then I'm going to come down, swooping down. Again, if this is her mouth, then her nose is going to be somewhere here. So we might have something like this. And again, we're going to adjust all of these going forward shortly here. But, okay, so if this was where the middle of the canvas is, her eye looks like it's kind of right here. All right, we've got a nose. And then lips. Somewhere like that. And so if this is our eye line, we're probably going to have a line going right through, because this one's a little bit higher than this one. Right, and we've got an eyebrow up here, and another eyebrow here, again slowly descending. And then we've got the corner of this eye would be in here. It's being kind of cut off a little bit, so. And you can see there's going to be a little bit of distortions here. I'm just sort of simplifying this drawing as much as possible. And we're losing some of the specific accuracy of the original. But I am not really concerned about making something that looks exactly like the original painting. I would come in here, kind of go out a little. Actually, she's cut hers in a little bit, so let's actually follow her lead here. Generally, this might come out for the eyebrow line, but and then we've got her hair kind of coming up. Okay. And got, this is her ear and her neck. Here's kind of looks like a big scarf wrapped around her neck, right? Fashionable Montrealer, or what is the French version of Montrealer? It's Montreal, right? Montreal. Okay. So now, once I've got this drawing down here, we can, again, taking a look at this original, like what are some of the differences? So, in fact, let's put this right across here. So if now we wanted to make some adjustments, and we just imagine this is the original here, just for proportion's sake. You know, it kind of looks like we got the eye in pretty much the right place right here. I'm pretty happy with the eyes. Right, so the eyes are are okay. The nose might be a little bit long, so I can trim the nose down a little bit. And I know some of you are like, "Oh no, all this work and it's going out down the drain." No, not at all. This is all important work where we're looking at the original and we're trying to figure out. We're getting more and more specific. You know, it's like drilling for oil, and the first time you go down, you don't hit anything, but you might get a little bit of a hint that you're in the right vicinity, right? That's what we're doing. We're trying to get in the vicinity. And we're going to paint over all of this as well anyway. All right, so you see how we moved the chin up? And then this would mean okay. So I feel pretty good about this. Now we're much closer to the original. Now it looks kind of like a mess, a little bit sloppy. We're going to paint over all of it, so don't worry, don't get all uptight about making it perfect and what it looks like in this stage. Okay, the other thing that's kind of nice about having a couple of paintings on the go is I could, you know, maybe change things around a little bit as I paint on it. I could decide, you know what, I'm going to use a different color scheme on one of the paintings and have a little bit of fun that way. So we've got our paintings ready to go. Let's get some paint on our palette. Okay. So as I said, we're going to use pretty much all of the paint, I think. This is, well, we'll see. Let's put it out there. What I often do is I tell people put as much paint on the canvas as you'd put on your toothbrush. All right, because you don't want to have to throw too much paint away. Okay. And then we'll put some white on here. And just a little bit of black, because black goes a long, long way. Okay, so we got the paint, we've got our canvases, the underdrawing done. What the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna put a wash onto this painting. So what is a wash? How do we do the wash? Let's do a little exploration really quickly. So maybe what do we need to do, like what colors do we need to get on this underpainting? So let's look at this painting for some clues. It's a good idea to delay for just a second with a little bit of tea so that you have a little bit of extra time here to pretend like you know what you're doing. Okay, so oh, I just see in the comments, Sue says, I didn't see the link to print. Where's the Dropbox? It is in, I just put it on literally right before we went live. So you may have to like press the refresh button on your browser for this video or on YouTube. And then that link might reappear down in the description below. So once so that would be a way to print that off. Okay, so looking at this painting, what can we deduce? Well, it certainly looks like this is, in here, the first color, right? This looks like our painting, our wash. And so it looks like a stain of like a warm red, like a brown, like a pretty, like, although very close to a neutral gray. Like it's not really bright. It's toned down, it's subdued. So we're gonna put that down first. Okay. And so how are we gonna mix that color? So let's get a little more light. Shine a little light on here. Okay. Where's my brushes? I'm going to use, oh, I didn't clean that brush very well. Michael, bad. See, this is what happens when you don't clean your brush properly at the end of the day. It kind of hardens up a little bit. And if you're lucky, you can kind of break some of the bonds in the paint there and return it to some semblance of normality. But I've definitely taken a little bit of the life out of this brush because, you know, now as it kind of hardened up there, these bristles, especially a cheap brush like this, it's what probably might happen, and we'll just see, is I might get some little pieces of the brush that break off, just like little loose hairs. We might find that in the painting. So let's just see if that ends up happening. Okay, so we want a warm brown as the underpainting. And often artists put a warm color down. We did this with the Bertha Morisot painting, what, a week ago? This time a week ago, and we painted the whole painting in one unified background color. So here's the color wheel from our very first episode. If we want to make a warm brown, right, my suggestion would be to use the warm red and the warm yellow. So you've got two warm colors here, and they meet together at orange. Its complement is blue. The color opposite on the color wheel is blue. So we are going to add a little bit of warm blue into this color here. So let's do this. And so we mixed this exact same color last week, but we might change it a little bit, or maybe just add a little more white to it. Let's just see how things go. So we take some red, warm red, and then the warm yellow. I think we'll need a little bit more of this. All right, so we got an orange now. Now I'm going to take my warm blue. I don't need too much of it, right? Because you could see, boom, it really starts changing that painting or that color really quick. So let's see here. So I like this color right now, but this color more closely resembles her hair. Right, you can see it's even too red for her hair. Right, so we're going to add a little bit more blue into this. And the more blue we put in here, the more it's going to neutralize the orange and start making it go more and more brown and more gray, and kind of a dirtier color. Okay. So far that looks pretty good, but again, if this is going to be our underpainting and we want a little bit more, if I put this down, let's see. Actually, let's do two versions of it. That's why we got two of these paintings, right? So let's do two different types of underpainting here. So the first one here that I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this same paint that we just mixed, And I'm going to add a bunch of water to it. So here, I'll just show you what I'm doing. I'm dipping my brush in, just grabbing a little bit of water. All right, so I'm thinning this paint out so that I'm going to create a much thinner paint when I start painting, applying it onto the canvas. And a lot of the white of the paper is going to show through, or the canvas, right? So I take this, and then let's brush it on here. You don't have to be pretty with the way you apply this. So it just depends on the kind of the quality of the brush strokes at this point. Oops, let's put this back here. Right, like, do you like see how there's all this brush movement across here? Is that something you want in your image? If we look at hers, there is a lot of brushiness in this painting, but I don't see quite this type of texture. So let's see if we go straight up and down, what that does. Right, now we've got some lines on there. Those lines work pretty well. You know, they kind of mirrors a little bit of the drippiness that we see on the face. But another thing that we could do is that we could take a rag, and before this is too dry, we can just take this rag and kind of try to, I'm not trying to scrub it all off. I'm just kind of wiping, you know, I'm very delicately over the surface here. You might get a few places. See, it's kind of a little bit streaky, but, you know, again, it kind of works with the original painting itself, right? So this would be a way of kind of just soaking up a little bit of the paint on there. There's a little bit of a buildup on the bottom. I could try to wipe a little bit more of that away if I wanted. But I think that looks kind of good. I'm pretty happy with that so far. Okay, so that's one way of going about things. So let's just try a separate one, just so you could see the different possibilities we have here. I'm going to take the same mixture that we had, and this time I'm going to add a little bit of black and white into this paint. So right now, if I put the white in, I'm adding what's called a tint. All right, so now I've got a tint here. And that's fine, but let's add a little bit of, well, that might be a lot too much black, but let's see. Okay. So here's another version. Oh, I keep getting black on there. So let's take this, and then, yeah, let's look at the original here. So we can see it's a little bit closer to hers, and I could paint this on here. Oh, a little bit of black, extra black came out of my brush there. All right. And now I'm just going to take my brush and kind of scrub in and kind of just disperse a little bit of this paint around, because I'm also running out of paint. And I could mix this again, but I'm also, we don't want it to be too thick of a layer. Or generally you don't want to, especially if I've got my pencil lines underneath there that I want to keep. Okay. So let's take a look at these two different versions that we have here. And you can decide which one you think is best. Right, so this one is maybe a little bit warmer, right, because we haven't added any white or black to it. So it's basically just that brown, and then we wiped away some of the brown on the top, and so the white of the board is showing through here. And let's see if we look at this original, you know, which one do you prefer? They're both like a little bit different. How it's going to affect the original, we'll see as we go here. Now, I am tempted, even at this point, to get a little bit nutty here. Let me see. What I'm going to do, let's see if I can get this to work. Yeah. Okay. So, I'm going to drip some water across the surface of this picture and make a bit of a mess. So I'm just going to get myself set up to do this. So let's say I'm going to take this canvas and how can I make this work on screen the best? Maybe we'll try it like that. Okay. So if I take some water, where's the shadow coming from? And we take some water, and I'm just going to start pouring it down across the surface of this picture here. And I'm going to sort of just let it sort of dissolve a little bit of the paint. Let's try to put. Right, and so trying to get, let's even try to take our brush and try to get splatters in specific places here. Okay, so right now, I mean, I'm happy with the way that the paint is sort of dissolving a little bit. If I want, I can also take and try to accentuate that. You see how we start getting some of these drips and splashes coming down. Okay, so I don't know if you can see in the reflections. So this is a pretty subtle technique. We could keep on going here and really let it get really kind of gross and messy. But I think I just want to kind of show you how we can use this underpainting for this next couple steps here. So speaking of which, where's our original here? Okay, so the next step after we've got the underpainting completed, and this one that we just did is going to take a few minutes to dry. So I'll work on the other one in the meantime. I'll just set this out of the way to dry. So we'll bring this one back in here. So the next thing I think we'll do is we're going to mix that same, we can use the same brown, although I think rather than all this white that was in there, the white and the black, which formed a gray, and that's called it, when we add a gray to a color, we add tone to a color. And I think I like that pretty vibrant brown to begin with, so I think we'll just kind of go with it. Let's clean this brush a little bit. Okay. And, you know, this color that I mixed originally, I don't mind if it gets a little bit out on the brush. So where are we? Let's go here and let's mix all of this. We might need, I might be able to, well, yeah, we'll need a little bit more of the warm yellow. So we take our warm yellow, take our warm red, and get a nice bright orange. And let's do this again. We'll take our blue. Might have been a little bit too much blue. Looks pretty good. And it's always, you know, important to kind of think about this color was going to change when we apply it onto the canvas, right? It might look too dark or too bright, and then when you actually paint it onto the surface, it looks a little bit different again, right? So let's get that color here. Let's look at the painting. Okay. So part of her process too is a certain kind of speed of work, right? So we're not going to labor over this painting too much. I'm just going to paint in this hair. It's okay if we kind of go outside some of these lines. We're going to clean that up later on as well anyway. Okay. And so that looks, you know, pretty bright red. Now, I was like just looking at the canvas, and then I look at the, I'm like, whoa, that's actually much brighter than I was expecting. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this here, but I'm going to add more blue to this mixture. And let's get it darker. And then let's just kind of repeat. We're going to go over top of most, but maybe not all of the original here. And as I'm going, I'm kind of, the colors are mixing here. So the previous one is kind of getting in here. So I'm going to add a little more blue in here. Okay. I think I might darken that again later, but I'm going to have to wait for this to dry a little bit. So let's see. I wonder, well, let's do a little experiment with this other one. See, now look how things have changed as the water starts to kind of really eat away at that surface. I like how that's the effect it's having here. So let's mix some of this brown. We've got warm and warm yellow and warm red, and then we added some warm blue. So let's just see if we start painting on here, because this is still very wet. So what's going to happen here? Now she would have been painting with oil paints, which is a totally different kind of painting medium and process. And you would use different types like paint thinner to as opposed to water to do some of this mixing. Let's take some blue just to darken this down. Adding just a little bit of variety in here. So I'm pretty happy with that so far. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and start painting the clothing down on the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep my brush. I'm not going to wash it or do anything to it. I'm going to use mostly this warm blue down here. And we're going to add some white to it. And we'll just sort of look at this color. All right, so we know how that looks. All right, so we're going to add just a little bit of black to it. And actually, while we're right here, that color is looking pretty good for on her face. Some of these shadowy areas. So you know what? I'm actually just gonna go right in here, and I'm gonna keep this really big brush as I do this. Okay. And I'm painting over a little bit of those pencil lines, so it could be a little bit confusing. So I'm going kind of lightly as I paint on here. Okay. And okay, so I've got that done. How about let's just do the same thing to the other painting while we're right here and we got that color nice and mixed up. All right, so I'm just going to take this same dark color, applying it right directly over this painting. You know, again, I'm using this bit of a larger brush because I think that's part of her kind of process with this painting is not worrying so much about the accuracy of details, and she's just sort of really attacking the canvas pretty boldly, this painting style she has. So, you know, as I'm doing this, I'm seeing that now I can really see the difference in this is much brighter. But you know what? We'll do another wash afterwards, and maybe we'll get some of that drip stuff going on as well again. So let's just keep on moving forward here. So let's add now a lot more blue into this mixture to get the jacket down here, because we've got kind of a dark, kind of this scarf or turtleneck or whatever she's wearing here. Coat, maybe, for those cold Montreal nights. Okay, so I've got this blue. It looks really, really blue on camera. It's not quite, looks much more gray to me, but let's just add a little more white to it anyway, and a little black to it. And then we get closer to a gray, because we've got gray in there, but we've now toned that blue. Okay, so now I take this color and let's see what we get. Okay. And if you want, you can even I just took a little bit more blue and put that on my brush. If I want, I can go a little bit darker later on. I'm feeling pretty good about that so far. Okay. So I'm going to now go back to this other painting here. So I'm taking this same gray that I've mixed, white and black, mix it together here, and then let's do the same thing. We'll apply she's also using a combination of a little bit of a dry brush technique, and to do a bit of dry brush, you know, literally what I do is take my brush, and I can wipe some of the paint off onto a rag and then go and start painting with this dry brush onto the canvas here. Right? Or conversely, you could wipe some of that off. Okay. So let's see. I'm gonna add a little bit more black and blue into this mixture and darken it even more. And let's say in this area here. Okay. So that I'm pretty happy with all of this so far. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start outlining some of the features on the face, and then we'll put in the other blue, which looks like a bit of a much cooler blue, into the background. Okay. So I'm just going to clean this brush off, and we can even use this exact same color we've just mixed. Let's find, which brush do we want? Maybe a little bit on the smaller side brush, because we've used a really big brush for a lot of this and to get some of these details in here. So let's try to get something, and the paint is still wet, which I don't mind. I kind of like that because we're going to see some of the paint mixing a little bit on the brush. Okay, so I'm going to take the same color, but I'm just going to add a little bit more black to it. And let's add a little bit more of this brown in here too. Because I don't want it to just be pure black. I want there to be a little bit more life in that dark color. So let's go back here. Okay. So a few things are, we've got her ear is in here. got her eyebrow. So you see I'm kind of working, I'm right-handed, so I'm kind of working my way left to right. Okay. I'm kind of messed up a little bit on that eye. I'm not too concerned about that, though. Let's get this other one down here. So this is the bridge of the nose right here. I'm not going to outline the whole nose because we've got this nice sharp outline here. Okay. Down here underneath the nose, a little bit of a line. And anything here we can clean up. You see that she did afterwards go over, she's added a bit of pink here, a little bit of blue, and gone over this area, which we're going to do. I haven't forgot about that yet, but one thing at a time here. Amy says she'd love to see her with purple hair. Oh, okay. Well, maybe we can do that with the other painting. That sounds kind of interesting. Okay. Well, looks pretty good so far. Anything else that I feel might need to be done at this stage? Again, I feel like the contrast between this shadow and this part of her face needs to be, we need to get this to go a little bit darker, or this could be lightened up a little bit, but I think darker because this is the shadowy side of her face. So we can do more drips going down this side. Might be a little dangerous because I really do like how this turned out. So I could be, I'm open to leaving it a little bit like that because I'm worried about more and more layers I put on here, I'll kind of just obliterate that area of the painting. Let's see, just a little bit of a line here. Okay, so there's that one. We'll set this to dry and we'll come back to this one here. And we'll do the same thing. All right, we got her ear here. eyebrow. Okay. Down here in the nose. Comes down. And then we've got okay. Coolness. Okay. So two slightly different approaches so far. Let's just see them side by side. Okay. You know, obviously, so this is the one that I eyeballed and did a little quick sketch for. This is the tracing from the original image. You know, obviously the way I've done this is these eyes are a little bit big, but I kind of like it. It seems, you know, it doesn't seem too crazy. I do like this hair a little bit better because we see more of this part of the hair, which I kind of had to cut off just because of the way that I originally sketched it. But in terms of the mood, they still feel fairly similar. Like, they don't seem too radically different. Okay, so how are we doing? Both of them are still pretty wet. So I think what I'm going to do next is I'm going to add the blue paint around the edges here. So let's look at this original. So it's possible that she just used some more warm blue here. It does look like in this area, this looks a little bit like ultramarine blue. I'm going to suggest that we use some cool blue just to help push the background further into the back here. So let's get our paint out here. Let's move these out of the way. Okay, so to get that bit of a muddy, cool blue, we're going to use the cool blue, some white, and even a little bit of black. So it'll be mostly a tint, a little bit of tone in here. So let's get our brush ready here. Got some of this cool blue. Let's add some white to it. So you can see this right now is just way too intense, right? Really still super, super bright. We add a little bit of black. That's only a little too much. Boom. We just sort of cut down on the intensity. Now it's almost like too dark. And then here we go. Now we're getting a little bit closer to the original. So let's bring in the canvas. We take our paint and let's start kind of cleaning up. Now, it's up to you. You can see how she's left a little bit. She's not fixated on making these nice, super clean edges. In fact, you can see that she's painting quite quickly. right? And there, we've got like that kind of splattery quality going on. There's places where she does get closer and kind of cuts in a bit. Right, I'm trying to get a little bit more, bringing, oops, that was maybe a little bit too much. So we're going to come back here in a bit anyway, work on her profile of her face, but I kind of like how that looks so far. Let's skip over to this side. Also just gonna trim this down here. Okay. Right, you can see there's just barely a little bit of hair there. Okay, that looks pretty cool. Now let's rotate that one out and try this with this canvas. Taking the same blue, a little bit of white in here, mixing this up again, a little bit of black back in there. Okay. I'm actually going to take a little bit of water because one of the things that I kind of like about her image is actually there's some areas that are a little bit more transparent. We see more brush strokes coming through. So by adding a little bit of water, we might see a little bit more of the brushiness in this painting. Let's just get a little more water in here. I've also just, you could see even as she did here, this blue in behind her head is a little bit more intense and vibrant. And that's just a good way of kind of bringing some attention onto the back side of her head here. Because, you know, she's kind of, you know, this is the main focus of the picture, right? Her face. But we want also some of this area to be of interest to people too. We don't want them just to kind of, their eyes just to stop here looking at that. We want them to kind of move around the picture. So. Okay. So, you know, I'm actually getting pretty excited about actually both of these paintings. I feel like they're pretty close to where I want to go. But But I think we can still push it a little bit further and see where we go, right? As I said, maybe we add a little bit of purple to the hair there. Who knows, right? Because the cool thing about having two copies of the same painting we're working on is we've got one that we might be really happy with. And we're like, good, great, I got one that works. Here's another one that I can play with and do some experimenting with. So both of them are a little bit wet, which means time for some tea. Okay. So now we're going to get into a little bit of the finer details in here. I'm noticing there was some brush. Now it's like kind of, let's look at the original here a little bit closer. I want to get some of this pinkish kind of quality that was in that gray, and tackle this a little bit. So this is where things, this is actually another great reason to have two paintings on the go, is I can experiment with some colors, and if I make a mistake, I got a backup, right? So the stakes kind of are reduced when I work this way. So let's look at these and think about what we need to do. Okay. So we need a kind of the gray that we mixed, that we put down the center of her face. We can basically use that same gray, which is a brown with blue and white and black and more blue, and then we're just going to go the other way and add a little bit more red. In fact, I might even add a little bit of the cool red, but we'll see. I'm going to use a slightly smaller brush. Okay, so let's go here. What could we do to kind of play with this? You know, I'm just trying to think of, you know what, let's mix the same color again. Part of me is like, oh, let's do something a little bit different, but maybe that's just too much for our beginners class. Okay, so we're going to mix this same warm yellow, warm red, and the blue, and then we're going to add maybe a little bit more red here. So let's get... Okay, so let's take this process and repeat. So this is another reason why you want to have a limited palette, is it makes it easy to mix the same color again and again and again, right? If you have too many different colors on there and you say, okay, we got to mix that color again, it's like, I have no idea how we did that. All right, so now I've got this color on my brush. Let's just scoop a bunch out, put it on the side here. Let's get a little bit of white, a little bit of black. Okay, so I'm trying to get closer to this. It's a little bit too brown at the moment, so we need a little bit more white, a little bit more black. Now it starts to go kind of like a gray brown. Let's take a little bit more blue. Okay. More white in here. There we go. That's what we're talking about. Now what I'm going to do is actually going to add a little bit. Let's just see. We'll do a little mini test here with the cool red. I kind of like that cool red. Let's just see how it works on this painting. That's a little bit much. So let's add a little bit more white in here. Okay. And you know what? I think I'm going to actually now repeat this same exercise we did before, but with this paint on here. And I'm going to get a lot more water on my brush here. Let's go to... Okay, so let's mix this in this area here. Adding lots of water. We're going to do a very thin wash. So I'll show you what I'm doing here. Basically just washing that brush right off. I'm going to take this paint and go into this area of the face. Let's take a look here. Oops. It's going to go over some of this in here. Okay, and let's do this experiment again. Get a rag out to soak up some of that paint coming down the hill. Okay, let's try dripping some paint onto the surface here. That might be enough. We don't want to go too nuts. Okay, so we can let it drip. And we can see kind of how it's developing there. All right, maybe let's give it just a little help to drain down. Okay, now you can look at this part of the painting. Do I want these drips down there? I don't mind them, to be honest. I think, although, you know what, I'm gonna get a dry cloth. I don't mind them, but they're also, it's not really a part of her original painting, so I'm just gonna wipe it off a little bit. And you can still see some of that. It's taken some of the paint off. I don't mind that, though. Some of this paint on her face, I'm going to wipe off a little bit. Okay, let's again looking at the original. So now we've got a bit of this kind of strange texture that was there before. Slightly different color than the original, as mentioned before, but I think it kind of works. It's kind of the opposite of how we did the first one. Okay. So let's see. Is there anything we can do with this one in a similar sort of vein? I think we could repeat this exercise again. I kind of like, so maybe we might have 2 layers of this kind of, I don't know what that would have been, tears or something going on down there. It's a really wet brush. Okay. Again, we'll prop up the canvas. A little rag down. And then let's Repeat the dripping. Okay. So let that kind of work its magic for a couple. Thank you for pointing that out. Sorry about that. My my sound went out. Yeah, thanks, love. I just noticed. Okay. A little bit of outlines there. Let's see how this one looks with a little bit more. Going back in here, just adding a little bit more. One thing with adding a little bit of water to a paint like this as a last layer is it also is going to help prevent this last black layer from being too dominant and sitting too far on the top. I want it to be there, but I don't want it to kind of take over and not be integrated into the rest of the picture. Having a little bit of water in there is going to thin the paint out and just make it kind of sit not quite on the surface, but just maybe yeah, it's not going to be so intense, like it's or just too dark. Let's get these eyelashes on here. Okay. Now, there is this area here. Do I want to do anything with it? I think I should. Now, the question is, what should I put in there? It needs to be a gray. I'm not sure about that. So I think I need a little more white. Just make it gray. Adding a little bit of yellow into this gray. My finger and see if I can blend that out. Going a little nuts again. You know, right near the end, this is when all the crazy stuff seems to happen. But so it might have been a bit too dark here, but I don't mind so far. We'll see. So that's too much. Too much, Michael. Okay, so let's back it off. Let's go over some of this. Okay, no, this is not going in the direction I hoped. So let's you know, if things aren't going your way, maybe it's time to drip a little bit more water on this painting and see where it takes us. I thought it was pretty close. Let's see if we look at the original. Kind of feel like that adding a little bit of that water helped, certainly in this instance. Still not quite happy with what's going on the forehead, but I actually feel I feel much better all of a sudden about it. The question is, do I want to do anything down here? You know, again, I just got to stop looking at the original, you know, the Betty Goodwin's picture here, and just looking at this, and am I happy with the painting as it is? I think so. I want to put a little, since I did obliterate a little bit of this with the water drops. Okay, I think this one is done. It's different than the original, but I like on the way it looks on its own. I like the drips down here. Again, a little bit different than hers, but I don't mind that happening. It adds a kind of a unique quality. I could see some people not liking that part of it, but you know, it's my painting. I get to do whatever I want with my painting. So we're gonna keep that one to the side, and I'll come back. And wow, very different. It's like all of a sudden, like, whoa, this is a totally different painting. So if you know, I've got one version. Let's just look at these side by side, because I think I've got one that I'm happy with. The one that we used the tracing paper or the computer printout to get the composition. Like this one I feel pretty happy with. I'm pretty happy with this. And it's funny because there were times where I really liked the one on the right more than this one. And they've sort of gone back and forth, flip-flopped a few times. So, like I actually like some of this weirdness going on in this shadow of the face. I feel that's effective. I like the hair better here. So, I think what I want to do, I want to spend maybe the last 10 minutes working on this one. And this allows me now some opportunities to play a little bit. My wife mentioned something like, oh, it'd be cool to have purple hair. Well, let's why not? Let's do a little bit of purple hair. And so to get purple hair, I need to get some more warm blue. We'll put this over here. So we've got warm blue and cool red will mix together. I'm going to keep some of these brushes, which are kind of dirty, together. I'm not even going to bother washing them. Just so we've got this purple we can bring in here. Woo! Yeah, okay. Oh, I like that. Okay, so let's take this color that we've just mixed and be a little bit wild and bold. And I'm going to scrub this in here. So I still want to keep some of the paint that was there. I'm not going to scrub it right out. I want to kind of incorporate it into this picture. So maybe I'm going to go here. Let's get so I'm just taking some blue with a little bit of red in there. Again, lots of emotions while I'm working on this. I don't know. But, you know, let's just go a little bit nuts and see where this takes us. We can do the same thing down here with her clothing. You know, this is maybe sacrilege, taking her great painting and kind of playing with it in this way, but I think it's fun to kind of start from a place and end up somewhere totally unexpected. You know, and when you have something like this that you've already you've got one in the can, it's, you know, there's no danger of ruining that one. We can go nuts on this one and really sort of play with it. Let's see. What else could we do here? I'm not sure I'm convinced with that hair. But I do like what I've done down here in the bottom. So why don't we just take, I've got a rag here. I'm just going to wipe some of this off. Okay. So, actually, I feel this is better. I think I do prefer that brown here. But you know, that's what's fun about, like, you can take a suggestion, see where it goes. If it works, it works. If not, you don't have to keep it. I'm gonna get some brown back for that hair. That's going too many. All these colors mixing together in these bright lights, hard to see. I need some black. You know, even just those few brush strokes, kind of speeding things up, I think that helped me a lot just there. Sometimes you think like, oh, things aren't working, I gotta slow down and be more careful. Maybe it's the exact opposite. I need to kind of be a little bit looser and not be so afraid. I think that helped there a bit. Feeling much better all of a sudden about all of this. Let's see, a little bit of a dry brush. So I was going to make a whole other painting today, and obviously that's not happening. So now I do want to do something right in here. I think I'm going to take the same color I've just been using. Let's paint. Okay, I don't know how much more I can do on here. Do I want to do more drips on there? I don't think so. I do think I just want to quickly outline a little bit on those eyes, and then I think we're done. Two very different paintings. And they may even change as the paint dries too, right? So it turned, I could 24 hours from now look at both of these paintings very differently and have very different kinds of emotions about them, and which one I feel was more successful than the other. Just see what the original looks like as we keep going further and further away from it. So her eyes look a little bit surprised right now because the way I've painted it, that eye is really wide open. So I'm just coming in here and lowering these eyelids a bit. That helps. It's giving her a few eyelashes that aren't really in her painting, but just I was afraid it might be looking a little masculine, so I just want to make sure that that comes back through. Okay. I'm feeling much better about this. You know, I feel like it went off the cliff there for a little while, and bringing it back is a really satisfying part of the creative process. And it's you're not always able to rescue a painting. I feel like I need a little bit of blue right on the lip there. Okay, I think I don't know if they're going to get any better than that, but I just want to take a look at them side by side. Two very different paintings, starting the same place, gone in different, slightly different directions. Okay. I think it's time to sign these. If you found this helpful, please like and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you find out about the next videos and when they're going to be up on the, or when the next classes that I'm teaching are. It is. After the great Betty Goodwin's there's one. Yeah, you know, it's like they're two totally different paintings. It's super interesting to see that. Which one do I like better than the other? Hard to say. I like them both for different reasons. Yeah, I don't know. Now that they're done, I'd be interested to hear which one you guys like better. Here's A and B, or 1 and 2. It's up to you. Which one do you like better? All right, there are two different paintings starting from the same place, going in, coming out on the other side slightly different. Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining me for another one of these episodes. I hope you learned something. You saw me using a few slightly different processes, especially at the beginning, and then, you know, going kind of a few times during the course of this painting, I encountered some rough spots where things weren't turning out the way I liked. And I had a few different strategies for that. One was to kind of ignore it, ignore the problem, and work on a different part of the painting while, you know, and after a while, some of those problems evaporated, and I didn't even realize where they were. I forgot where they were, just because using a different color elsewhere changed the whole picture altogether. And then the other thing was, you saw me just dripping some water on there, scrubbing the paint off, trying different colors, liking it, not liking it, scrubbing it off. All of those things actually, I think, made the picture better, because even though I wiped some stuff off or water dripped down, it still kind of left a little bit of details in the picture and just gave it that extra little bit of just like ineffable it's that thing with painting. I don't know how to describe it. If I could describe it, I wouldn't be painting. But it's just that little feeling that something was there, that, you know, it's like the little sprinkle of a different spice in your soup, and it's just like, what is that? What? That's cinnamon? Oh, it's so strange. You would cinnamon, but it works, right? So it's sometimes you just have to just keep on going, even when you hit some of those rough spots. And, you know, it's possible that it won't work out. And if it doesn't work out, you know, just walking away, taking a breath, and then coming back maybe later, you know. And that's, again, why working on two paintings at the same time, using the same kind of palette, is also kind of nice, because that way, if one isn't turning out, you can go to the other one, work on it for a little bit, and then come back to the other one, you know, fresh, while you're still painting. So it's not like you just totally left the room. They're still there and you're still working, but you can just come back to it 5 minutes later and pick it up where you left off. Sue says she likes B more, right? That's kind of interesting, because, again, that was one where I almost kind of panicked halfway and was just like, half an hour ago, like, you know what, I've got one good one, let's walk away, right? So it's kind of interesting to hear that, Sue, you like the second one, the one that I finished lastly, you know, I don't know, I find that super interesting, right? And I think I might prefer that one too. But I wouldn't have felt that way if you asked me half an hour ago if I liked this. I probably would have said this one was a lost cause. So hopefully you could take some inspiration from my own struggles working on this painting. Despite how kind of simple it was, there was lots of playing around we had in there, doing some unconventional things that we haven't done so far, especially pouring water over the surface of the picture. So I think that brings us to the end, my friends. And if you also want to support the channel, there's a link to the PayPal link below. You can contribute $1, $5, $5 million if you like. And please don't forget to join the Facebook page. There's a link to that. Go to the Facebook page, join up there if you want to contribute and send an e-transfer or other kinds of ways that you might want to share. Or another great way that is also really helpful is just by sharing a link to this video or any of the other classes I've taught on your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, or whatever, and let people know that they can take this class as well. That's just as helpful as your financial contribution. So thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your evening. We will see you next week. We are going to do a Marc Chagall painting, one of the great artists of the last century. We're going to make a painting of his. Another that one's going to be much more colorful than this one for sure. He's definitely a colorful character, colorful painter, and we'll celebrate his work next week. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Or that's on Thursday. What am I talking about? Today was the last day of teaching at the university, so it feels like Friday to me. So anyway, we'll see you in a couple of days. Enjoy your time, and we'll see you very soon, my friends.